This is our mixing board. So you probably don't know how to use it yet. That's fine. That's why I'm making this video. So the first thing you do with our mixing board is you make sure everything is returned to 0 and everything's flat and everything's done. So see, all these are turned all the way down. These black ones point all the way up. These white ones all the way to the side. These 3 colored ones, the green, blue, and white, or gray, turned all the way to the side. The yellow ones should be all the way up. And these faders, the faders are what these slidey things are called. The faders are all the way down at the bottom of the channel. This yellow one can stay up, but this tape is here so it doesn't stay up anymore. So that always stays up. Alright, so first things first, what do we have coming in? So up top, so as you can see, we've got our inserts. So a normal channel looks like this. We've got an XLR at the top, which is what that 3-pin is called. Then we also have what's called a line insert. So that would be if you've got a guitar or maybe another speaker or something. So that's a line insert. But at top is a mic insert. So usually plug a mic into that. And that's what we've got plugged in. So these 4 are all hardwired and they're running all the way from the snake on stage. You already know what the snake is from the other video. These 6 colored ones with 2 more that aren't plugged into anything, these 6 are from the wireless mics up in the booth. This is from the mini snake up in the booth. So the mini snake just goes from here right over to the wireless mics over there. So, and they're all labeled accordingly. So number 1 is wireless mic number 1. Number 2 is number 2, and everything like that. So that's all those inputs up there. But say you had a guitar or something, then you plug it into the line insert. It's important that you don't plug guitars or other instruments into the mic inserts, because the mic inserts are much more sensitive and guitars are too loud for that. So the next thing you do is the gain. So this is a process called gain staging. So when you gain stage, you look at these red knobs called the gain knobs. And that basically sets how sensitive each channel will be when you're using your mic with it. So when you want to gain stage, you have to do a couple different things. So first, make sure your gain is turned all the way down, and then turn your fader for that channel all the way to 0. So it's at 0. Make sure the output fader, the master fader, is at 0 as well. Then unmute the channel and make sure it's either all the way to the left or all the way to the right. This is because when it's in the center, the board cuts it down a little bit. So turn it all the way to the left so you can get a good signal out of it. We're going to be gain staging for channel number 5 today. So we got it turned all the way up to 0. We've got the master fader at 0. And now we're going to adjust this gain knob on number 5 until this little bar over here is going to start going up and down. And you're going to see it go into the yellow and green because somebody's talking into the mic right now, so we can hear them. So you see right now the gain's right about here, and you can see that it's only going into the green. So we keep pushing that gain until, as they keep talking, and we keep pushing it further and further until they're hitting the yellow with every word they speak. But we don't like them hitting the red so much. Right now this is a pretty good level because they're going into the yellow with everything they say, but they're not hitting the red as much. Maybe if they say a word like slightly louder or something, they'll go into the red for a little bit, but that's fine. So that's how we want it to be set. It's in those yellow 3 most of the time. It can hit the red a little bit if they're too loud. It can hit the green if they're too quiet, but it's just fine right there. And you'll set that for every channel every time you set up the board. Next on the board, so the board is laid out in a linear fashion. So the signal will come in from the top, from the mic. It'll go down, it'll be gained. Then it'll go down to our EQ section, this gray square. Then it'll go to these aux sends. Then it'll go to the pan. And then finally, it'll go to these faders. And then it'll go all the way over to the side to the master fader. And then it goes out, the two outputs over there. So you turn the pan back to center after you're done gain staging, and that's it. So you don't even have to have the speakers plugged in to do that, because you're just looking at that monitor right there. So after gain staging, what you're going to do is EQ. So EQ are these 4 knobs right here, and these are to make the voice sound better or get rid of feedback. So typically feedback is going to be in your mid section. So these EQ knobs work like this. If you turn it this way, it adds to that signal. So this is HF, or high frequencies. So it'll add some high frequencies. And if you move it the other way, it'll subtract some high frequencies. So just use it as you feel is appropriate until it sounds good. But for this, and the same thing for these low frequencies down here. So it'll add this way, and it'll subtract the other way, and it's all written down on there. But for the mids, it's a little different. So these mids, you can actually change the frequency it's going to. So this black one still adds or subtracts, but this white one will change the frequency that you're adding or subtracting from. So what you do to reduce feedback is typically you blast these mids, you turn them way up, and then you sweep. So you turn this white knob until you hear crazy amounts of feedback. The feedback is the whoo, it's that sort of noise. So once you hear so much of that noise, you turn this, you keep that at that frequency, and you turn this down. So you're subtracting that, and you're getting rid of feedback that you might have. And that's how you tune the EQ. Next are these aux sends. So aux sends are a way to put out signal to different speakers if you need it, like backstage or something. We typically don't use these because we don't have much use for them, but the way you would use them if we needed them is, say you're running a separate speaker for, maybe there's an orchestra. We've somehow got an orchestra playing, and they need to hear all the voices of the people on mics. So you turn up each of these mics. So maybe these are the 4 leads. So you turn up their volume a little bit, and all these green knobs will go out. So these are labeled aux 1. So they'll go out to this channel right here where it says aux 1 out up at the top of the board. So then you hook that aux 1 out up to whatever speaker the orchestra's looking at, the orchestra's hearing, and then they hear it. And then you can adjust how much they hear of each person by changing these knobs right here. But typically we don't use those, so don't worry about that so much. Next is the pan. We don't need to change this at all, but what it does is in the middle, it's at center. If it goes to the sides, it's moving left or right. But then again, we don't need to change that. We always keep things in the center. Then down here, we have all of our faders and our mute buttons. So these mute buttons, you always mute someone if they're like off stage. Try not to mute them when they're on stage, because they might say a line and you don't mute them or unmute them fast enough. But once they go off stage, you should turn those mute buttons on. And if you want to turn everybody's on at once, it's nice and easy. Just hit them all. Missed 2, but just like that. If you need to turn everybody off, it's nice and easy. And then we have our PFL buttons down here. So those are solo buttons. So say somebody's giving you trouble and you can't quite pinpoint it, but you need to listen to their mic to maybe tune the EQ a little bit. You press this PFL button right up here, and you'll be able to hear their mic only through whatever you've got connected. So the speakers will still play everybody else's mic, but if you've got, say, your headphones hooked up, you'll be able to hear only their mic through the headphones if you've pressed that PFL button for their mic, so you can tune it. The mix and sub button, don't worry about that. We don't use our sub. And then over here, we've got our PC hooked up. So the booth PC is hooked up right here. And then this one is an aux channel. So if you want to hook up your phone or something, and they're labeled as such. Usually I reserve this last channel also for the God mic. So the God mic is right here. It's that mic in the booth. And then this monitor level right here, that controls everything to the backstage camera, or not the backstage camera, but the backstage TVs. So that controls the amount of sound. Always keep that all the way turned up because they can control the sound on the TVs backstage. We also have a headphone jack, so if you want to plug in your headphones to mix better, then these two cables plug into the projector to get sound from the projector. And then these two cables, I unplugged them because we're tuning the board, but these two cables lead out to the speakers. They lead out to the speaker distributor box. So if I plug them in, as they should always be, don't unplug them. And then those go to the speakers, and that's everything. And then that is pretty much everything with the board. Always be sure to have some tape down here to label whatever your inputs are, so you know just from a look. I also like to put the colors of whatever mic I'm using, so I know wireless 1 is green, wireless 2 is blue, wireless 3 is red, wireless 4 is white. Just helps me out a little bit. And that is our board.